Who is the most interesting team in the Eastern Conference to you?
We briefly touched on it a little earlier, but I really like the Hawks. I think that they have such an easy route to improvement in terms of what they did this offseason. The Porzingis addition, I think, is huge. Carson, I know we've talked about this a million times on the show already, but like people I just think are generally down on KP this year because of how bad the playoffs were and how he looked. Like he just brings a dimension that this team really hasn't had at the center spot in terms of just general size, like running with Onyeka, a 6'9" center. They're actually going to have a legitimate rim protector and rebounder down there, a guy who can, Onyeka's gotten better as a shooter, but KP's a different level of floor spacer and mismatch attacker, and he just brings a lot more scoring punch and rim protection. The return of Jalen Johnson, I think, is huge. He was balling last year, probably would have been an all-star if he had stayed healthy. And then the internal development of guys like Risache and Daniels. Daniels, I'm less optimistic about him just, becoming a better offensive player, but there is room there. But I really thought Risache was solid as a rookie and could be even more impactful. I just look at them and I see a really solid two-way basketball team, and Trae Young is going to make them an elite offense. That's just such a bankable thing with Atlanta. So I just see a lot of improvement with this team, and I think that they are I'm not going to go out on a limb here and go super hot take. I'm not going to say they're a championship contender, but they are on that fringe. I'm going to hedge my bets here. If they come out and look hot in the first 2 weeks, maybe I will come here and say some crazy mess like that. But they're on the cusp. And I will say, with a vulnerable Eastern Conference, as we've already mentioned, Tatum out, Hallie out, maybe the Hawks are like that next team that could jump into that group. So I really like Atlanta. I think they are the most fascinating team in the East.
Really quickly, too, just a brief follow-up on our Western Conference thing. If Kyrie comes back, Dallas becomes a lot more dangerous. It's very similar to what I was talking about with Andrew Wiggins with the Lakers. I'm a big believer in, your talent relative to what a team needs. And Kyrie, immediately addresses two of their biggest weaknesses, which is off the dribble shot making and off the dribble playmaking. It just immediately addresses a major need and slots Cooper better and all that kind of stuff.
Totally.
I was torn between Atlanta and Orlando here. Atlanta, to me, I need them to be successful this year to validate a lot of my big picture basketball beliefs, centering around what we talked about earlier with Oklahoma City in terms of generating margin with turnovers and transition and just having athletes that can dribble, shoot, and pass relatively competently and that can thrive in transition and on defense on the perimeter. The second piece of it is my general belief in advantage creation. One of the reasons why I'm so keen on players like Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic now, or players like Steph Curry and LeBron James back in their era. I'm just a big believer in that talent. I think Trae is a flawed player for obvious reasons. He's very susceptible to switching. He can be inconsistent to downright bad defensive player, but I actually think he's one of the most gifted advantage creators in the entire NBA, especially against traditional coverages. I've seen a lot of talk about what he would look like with Giannis and how it didn't work with Dame. I think Trae would make much better use of Giannis than Dame did. Substantially better. It'd be a completely different ball game. Dame straight up couldn't figure out how to use Giannis on the roll. There's no chance in hell that Trae doesn't figure out how to use Giannis on the roll. So you give me advantage creation, which is something that I believe in, a depth of versatile perimeter talent. You address the specific weakness of Trae's inability to beat switching and pick and roll, and add rim protection and rebounding in the front line. I need Atlanta to be good to legitimize my basketball beliefs. Do you have any? But that was my second place team. Carson, did you have any Atlanta takes before I give you my most interesting team?
I'll knock it out because Atlanta's my pick. I mean, I really, really like the Hawks, and I think they're the most interesting team in the league to me, honestly. I just think they're such a fascinating roster. I agree with pretty much everything you guys said, but this is definitely the best team on paper of the Trae Young era. They have one of the most athletic wing groups in the NBA with Jalen, with Risache, with Dyson, with now. And you mentioned some of the development here to watch, Logan. I mean, Risache, I think, is not somebody who's going to ever fundamentally change who he is as a player. I just think he has like some major on-ball limitations. But when it comes to like continuing to develop in this role of really good complementary wing who can shoot the ball well, who's great in transition, who cuts well, who can defend, like his progression last year already was so impressive. After January 1st, he gave you 14 points per game on 61% true shooting. And I just think he gets how to play offensively. And I think he's part of the reason that, like you were saying, Jason, they're going to be one of the best transition offenses in basketball, especially because last year they're top 5 in turnover percentage forced. Like after OKC, they might be the next best at turning defense into offense. I mean, they just fly up and down the floor. They were already way towards the top of the league in pace last year. And Jalen and Risa Shea, like they are such weapons in the open court there. And also, I think transition is going to be a big strength of theirs. But in the half court, they've got more ball handling than they ever have in the Trae era. Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson are the two guys who you look at there taking on more usage, and they both have their flaws for sure as ball handlers, but they do give this team more versatility where they are not solely bound to Trae being so overwhelmingly ball dominant. Obviously, he's still going to have the ball in his hands a shit ton, but I think we've seen in preseason even like they allow Trae to play off ball a little bit more and potentially create some separation for himself there. And Jalen, even though he doesn't have the most refined handle, he doesn't have the element of pull-up shooting to be like a really good pick-and-roll on-ball player. He's such a good athlete downhill, and he's a really good passer that, like, giving him that sort of runway, seeing everything from the top of the key, initiating actions for certain guys off-ball, like, I think he's quite good at that potentially. And that's also a way to potentially mitigate some of his meh shooting off-ball. So I really like Jalen Johnson. I think we can kind of sleep on the fact that he was 19, 10, and 5 last year and positive, versatile on both sides of the ball before he got hurt. He really fills in a lot of gaps for this team on both sides of the ball. And just overall, I think they're more versatile offensively than they've ever been in the Trae era. I'll say it again, like Jalen is a guy who can do some of anything. He can handle, he can screen for Trae, he can make reads off the short roll. But then if you want KP to screen for Jalen, they can have a two-man game. And then the Trae KP pick and pop game when they see conventional coverages, if they see drop, I mean, they can barbecue those looks. But if teams try to go switch heavy, as you were saying, Jason, where Trae struggles most, now you've got one of the best switch beating bigs in basketball in KP. So I just think they've done a really nice job of filling some of these holes, finding guys who do the things they need. And I think they're a smart team. Most of these guys have pretty good feel playing off of Trae. And it's just a nice complementary roster. Defensively, they've got a ton of athleticism and length around Trae. That's always kind of needed to be the top priority for this team's building, in my opinion, covering up for him on that side of the ball as much as they can. I think they'll be good there. And offensively, they've got guys who can finish plays well off of Trae. And then even in terms of the bench, you've got Na, you've got Onyeka, you've got Kennard. Like, there's a lot of talent here that really works together. So I'm actually going to even move Atlanta up. I had them behind Orlando as my 4th team in the East. I'm going to make them my Southeast Division winner now and my number 3 team. Just like seeing it out there in practice, just philosophically. I mean, similar to what you were saying, Jason, I just love the formula. I just think they're better built than Orlando. That's what it comes down to. Not more talent, but just a more complete roster.